Hi there, this is Alvin, and welcome to the Kickstart Commerce podcast, where we share search marketing and domain investing strategies to help grow your business. In today's episode, our guest is none other than the Braden Pollock, an angel investor, founder of Legal Brand Marketing, and a longtime domain investor and contributor to the domain industry. Today, Braden and I discuss why and how stockpiling near 15,000 legal-related domains jump-started his journey into domain investing, domain parking, and lead generation development of nearly 10,000 websites. And yes, I said 10,000 websites. Braden also discusses the strategy to overpay for domains, as well as how he made the pivot into investing in oneword.com domains. Braden also shares a few of his sales, as well as his 2019 numbers, as well as the first half of his 2020 numbers. We also talk a bit about the future of installment payments, equity and leasing plans for domains, including a few of Braden's own lease examples. And last but not least, Braden gives a bit of insight and prediction as for what's next for the domain industry post-COVID. So with that, Braden, man, welcome. Thank you for making time to join us today.
After all these years.
After all these years, Braden's giving me a hard time just because
you deserve it.
One, I deserve it. Two, he says I don't love him anymore. And what else? I know you have something else.
I thought we broke up. I don't know what happened. You asked me years ago if I would do the podcast. I'm like, yeah, anytime. Just call me. And then everybody else did the podcast. And I'm like, what? Is something I said?
Well, wait, hold on. It had been years. It probably does feel like years with COVID in effect, but it's at least been since August of 2019. I guess
right.
At what, Rick's Asheville meetup?
Right. And we are now, this is June 57th of 2113, right? So it's been years.
Oh my goodness. It feels like years, but man, like I said, thank you for making time to join us. And so for those of you that aren't familiar with Braden, so Braden, why don't you take a couple minutes here to explain to users, or rather listeners.
Users?
Exactly. I don't know what we're using these days.
Who's your audience again?
Domain users. That is too funny. So, man, take a moment here to explain or introduce yourself, who you are, and all that good stuff, and what you do.
Man, I'm still trying to figure it out. Who am I? So I am among other things, I'm a domain investor. I'm an angel investor, so I invest in a bunch of companies. I own a handful of companies, online and offline, mostly tech. And I've been investing for many years, domain investing rather, for many years, probably, about 13, 14 years now, I think, and active in the domain investment community. So I go to all the conferences, speak at a lot of the conferences, and I'm public about my sales because I want to have the comps out there. And I would imagine most of the people listening to your podcast have heard of me, probably not by choice, because I was probably foisted upon them.
So you've been in the industry 13, 14, well, let's just say 15 years, close to it. And so, I mean, how did you even get introduced into the domain industry?
I mean, it's a long time considering I'm only 21. Okay, so how did I get introduced? I have a marketing company, Legal Brand Marketing, which is a lead gen company for lawyers, and which is 16 years old. And so 16 years ago, there weren't a lot of, the internet was still relatively young back then, particularly for the legal community. And we would sign up clients for leads, but then they would come to us when they realized that they should have a website of their own. And because back then it was like, so what do I need a website for? And so then they would just come to us because like I was they thought I was their computer guy. And quite literally, we had people calling us when they weren't getting their email. And it turns out all they did was bought a smartphone, and it's like they thought it would magically show up when they turned it on. True story. So what happens is we were building websites for these guys and gals, and I would just acquire a domain name. I just hand register a domain name because back then I could, and give it to them because it was $7, and we're charging them $4,000 for a website, and we'd throw in the $7 name because I didn't care. And I would register maybe 3 and they would choose, or the canceled orders, or, however we ended up with extras. It just evolved over time. And then after a couple of years of that, I had a couple of hundred of these extra legal domains that nobody was using, but, I had registered them for $7 and I just had them, and, I'd let them expire a year later. But I had inquired about a domain name for a client, and it turns out it was owned by somebody. And I don't remember how that person contacted me or how I contacted them, but I didn't know that there was such a thing as an aftermarket. And the guy says he wants a few $100 for it. So I asked my client, listen, do you want to spend the $300 for this? And yeah, sure, fine. Right. My client didn't care, right? Because it didn't really move the needle. And then the guy says, I have this list of 15 names, and the $300, $600, $900. He had prices next to all of them, and he says, if you take all of them, I'll give them to you for $5,000. So I called up a few clients and I said, these are some pretty good names. Do you want them? It's $800. I'm not making money. I'm just passing it on. And almost every client that I called said, sure, I'll take it. It was pretty inexpensive. And I actually had put together I think even more than $5,000 based on his individual pricing. So I went back and ended up buying the portfolio, and then I had another half a dozen names. And so a friend of mine named David Rosenbaum, who is still kind of in the industry quietly, I asked him, he was the at the time, the national sales manager for .tv. And I said, about these domain names, anything I can do with these? I have a couple of hundred, and can I monetize them somehow? And he said, sure, park them. And I said, what the hell is parking? And he explained it to me, and then he told me about this conference that was coming up, a domain conference. And I'm like, a domain conference? What? and I went to this conference, and I was smitten. I knew the moment I got there, this is it. I was just fascinated. I was enthralled with people buying and selling domain names on the aftermarket. And then there was an auction, and there's these names are going for tens of thousands of dollars. There was a couple of, I remember there was I think it was AO.com. I think Div bought it for $140,000. At least that's what I remember. And I thought, $140,000 for a domain name. Of course, now you'd look back at a 2letter.com for $140,000. It was cheap, right?
Yeah, it's a steal.
But he knew what he was doing, and I didn't. But I was like, this is fascinating. And so I decided that I was going to continue down this path, buying these legal names, because I understood them, and I researched it more, and I started buying legal names. And then I started doing platform development after a while, and built out about 10,000 websites out of a portfolio, about 15,000 names. That was my peak, 15,000 names.
Wow.
10,000, and I had these 10,000 small, we call them microsites at the time, and I was generating leads off of it. And it was great until it wasn't anymore, because Google one day said, no more. And that was the end of that.
And about how long was that?
Sorry?
How long was that period of time that things were good and then they just evaporated?
I don't know, a couple of years, I think. Yeah, I think it was a couple of years, but it was great because back then there was still a fair amount of type-in traffic. It's dropped off since, but there was type-in traffic, and people would fill out these lead forms. I could generate these websites for just a few dollars.
Right.
And so collectively, I got a lot of leads out of 10,000 of these websites, and it worked until it didn't. And some of these names were names that worked for rankings, like dashes and like a 3-word .com or .net. Maybe the words were out of order. I mean, there were terrible names from a brand perspective, but perfectly fine for Google. So, all those eventually got dropped. And then I just started selling them off. And I've sold thousands of legal names at this point. And then if you want me to continue the story,
Yeah.
I started moderating conferences and kind of being more a part of the conversation. And when the GTLDs came out, which is, I don't know, it's been...
What, 2012?
Something like that. Something
like that.
But prior to the launch, everything that we talked about was about the new GTLDs coming out and which one is going to do well. Right. So which one are you going to invest in? And that was kind of like everyone had to determine where they're going to plant their flag. And then how's it going to affect long tails and the .net and .com? And the general consensus was, well, .com is king, right? And certainly the one-word .coms, that's not going to get touched, right? Because that's the cream, right? That's the best. That's no GTLD. Nothing's going to touch that.
Right.
That's going to continue appreciating. Now, the longtail.com, will it affect it? Maybe. Will it affect the short .nets? Maybe. Longtail.nets? Absolutely. Right. So this was the conversation. And so, and then which TLD is better than the other? And so when I was kind of thinking about, all right, where should I plant my flag? I determined that based on all this information that I was hearing and all the discussions that I was having with people, if .com is king and the one-word .com is definitely the cream, if that's the one that's not going to get affected, why don't I just focus on that as opposed to everything else? And up to that point, I was the legal guy. I bought legal names and I would see good deals go by because I started to get a better sense of what was a good wholesale price. Now I was seeing names sell in the wholesale market and I think, oh, that's a good price. Oh, but I'm the legal guy. I don't get into that. I do legal names.
And when you say legal names, Braden, now are you speaking in terms of like geoattorney.com, geolawyer.com, or kind of what kind of examples are you?
So legal names are oftentimes. I mean, I own stuff like lawyers.tv, so alternative extensions. But for a .com, it's usually 2 or 3 word, right? So it's like DUIattorneys.com or Los Angeles DUIattorneys.com, right? Los Angeles, in my mind, in this example, being 1 word, right? So it's geo practice area lawyer or attorney.com. Right? That's generally what my portfolio looked like.
Gotcha. Now, did it include any abbreviations like LAX or?
There would be abbreviations for a practice area, like bankruptcy might be abbreviated to BK, and then of course like geos are abbreviated as well, right? So a state, 2-letter state name, practice like DUI versus drunk driving or PI versus personal injury, stuff like that.
So then you just kind of considered yourself the legal guy, but you were passing up other options.
Yeah, because I'm still looking at all the auctions, right? And I'm attending and I'm having the conversations and I'm seeing what's selling. And I'm a part of the community at this point. So I'm seeing everything that's going by. I just didn't focus on anything but legal.
And when did that change?
Well, it changed just prior to the launch of the new Gs. When I was trying to determine where I wanted to plant my flag, the new Gs were so speculative, and the thing that was the least speculative were the one-word .coms. And so I thought, well, it's certainly more money, right, to invest in those. But I had decided it's time to pivot, and I should pivot to the thing that has the least amount of risk. And the one-word .com is really the least risk, most expensive, but least risk. I mean, and we talk about legal liquid names, right? A 2 or 3 letter or maybe a 4 letter numbers. They're liquid, but as a commodity, right? Whereas a one word is not a commodity because there's a buyer out there, there's a company that wants to brand on that name. So it's not liquid quite the same in that it's a commodity, but it is liquid in that we know it has a value, right? So if I decided that I wanted to sell, I don't know, catalog.com, while I want $500,000 for that name, I know that I could sell it 10 minutes from now, wholesale for $150,000.
Right.
Right. There are buyers out there like me that are like, yeah, I'll take that because I know I just need to hold on to it for a few years and I'll triple or quadruple my money. Right. So they're liquid. I mean, now I'm in a place where they're liquid because I know who all the other buyers are, right? That buy the oneword.coms, that buy the higher value premium names. And there are brokers that make their living just turning these premium names without waiting for the end user, right? They're kind of like B2B. They just buy it wholesale, sell it wholesale,
right?
And they make 10, 20 points on it and move on. But that's not bad if they buy a name for 50 grand and then sell it for 60 grand the next day. It's not a huge margin except for the fact that it's $10,000 that they made in a day.
Correct.
Not bad. And there's a few guys that make a shit ton of money doing that. But I buy them and I wait. I don't wholesale my names. I wait for the end users.
So then in terms of, at one point you had 15,000 names. So I mean, how many names do you have roughly today?
About 2,500.
2,500. Do you ever see yourself getting beyond that or?
No, I mean, I'd actually like to go the other direction.
And why is that?
Yeah, look, I'd like a leaner portfolio. Now I say that, but at the same time, I will pick up a name on auction that I think is a $3,500 name, and if I can pick it up for $300, I will, right? And then I just put it out there with a buy it now, and those sell too. And it's because I'm essentially already doing the work, right? I'm already out there looking at the names. I'm looking for bigger names. I'm looking for a solid, oneword.net maybe that I can pick up for a few thousand and sell for 35 grand, or the premium that, the premium oneword.coms really aren't on auction that much. Typically it's the brokers that send me those names, but it happens, right? And I'm watching the drops and I'm watching the auctions, and I'm still buying from those regularly because there's still plenty of those names that I can pick up in 10x, even on a smaller scale, but they require less work because they're just buy it nows.
So then, I mean, what do you make of today's auction prices? Obviously, I look and I think back some 5 years ago, some of the names you probably get for $50, $75, $100. Now they're going upwards $600 to maybe even $900, maybe even higher than that. What's to be made of that?
Yeah, so I don't know if this will continue. I mean, time will tell, but I think what's happened is we have seen, I think I was just talking to Josh Reason about this. We've seen a lot of new investors in the market, and it could be a combination of people at home looking for a side hustle. It could be investors that were around before that are now have more time and they're more active. These names are, I say they're inflated, but they're not going to be inflated in 5 years, right? Because these are all appreciating assets. So, names that I bought 5 years ago for 30 grand, now would cost me 60 grand, and I'm still doing it, and I'm still happy to do it, right? Because they're really worth so much more now. Look, Brent Oxley is doing a thing that I always wanted to do was, take like, $10 million and just buy up the super premiums and buy a bunch of premiums and overpay. I mean, I say overpay with an asterisk, and I'll come back to it. He's overpaying, and he's outbidding me and Drew and a bunch of other people that are buying these names, where I make an $80,000 offer and he just makes a $140,000 offer and he gets it. And we're like, but what, why are you overpaying? Except for the fact that in 5 years, is he overpaying?
Right.
He's not. It's going to be a little bit longer hold. He's putting out a little bit more cash. He doesn't have as many names as the rest of us do. He's got a relatively tight portfolio.
100, 200 names, if that.
Right. And out of that, 20 of them are just, solid, really good names. And he's, his price points are $500,000 up into the seven figures, and he's going to wait. And he'll wait it out, and he can afford to wait it out. And, great. And the thing is that the name that I wanted to spend 80 grand on because I thought it was worth 800,000, and he spent 140. And if he still gets 800,000, so what? Like, what was that $60,000 delta? It doesn't really make a difference, right? Because there's enough margin in there.
Right.
So, who's right? I don't know. Just like the brokers that put 20 points on a name and turn it the next day, is that better or worse? Because I'm going to sell it for 10 times what I paid, but it's going to take me 5 years to do it.
Right.
So, making 20% in a day or 1,000% in 5 years. I can't say what's right or wrong. I mean, they're just different strategies, but they're both profitable.
So then in terms of now, I would assume that because you were involved in other businesses, that kind of gave you a springboard into the industry, and so for the common domain investor, I would imagine most domain investors aren't going to come into the industry with $10,000+ or whatever to be able to invest. But in terms of today's climate, obviously we're looking at 40 million people, some odd counting, that are unemployed, and that number changing weekly. Likely folks are looking for side hustles. What would you suggest in today's climate in terms of getting into the industry or trying to get into that next level, let's say from sub 1,000 into that $10,000, $20,000, $50,000 range? What do you suggest is the path for getting there?
So getting in the industry, there's plenty of opportunity. I mean, there were people, 10 years ago that said all the good names are gone.
Right.
5 years ago they were saying it again, and there's the names are still out there, right? And it's not like we're not talking about new terms arise, right? That over the last few years, crypto and token and coin and all those became popular. It's not about new terms so much as just appreciating assets across the board and more companies going online, more people building websites. So the opportunity is still there. When I buy a name, I want to get 10x, but why? Why does it have to be 10x? Why can't it be 5x, right? I mean, it's crazy that I turn down offers that are 4 or 5 times what I paid for a name a year ago. Like anywhere else on the planet, in any other investment, that would be a huge win, right? To sell something for 4 or 5 times what you paid a year ago. But in the domain world, it's like, no way. What? I'm only going to double my money in a few months? Forget it.
And why is that?
Because we're selfish and greedy. Because we've come to learn that we can do it, right? That we're not going to leave money on the table.
Right.
But that's not for everybody. People have different strategies. But there's plenty of people that would be happy to triple their money, right? Or double their money. Like I invest a lot of money into names, and so I'm holding millions of dollars worth of names, and so I need to have that spread because I have so much money out, right? And I also don't have a lot of sales relative to some people, right? Some people are turning names all the time. I don't turn names all the time because I'm asking big numbers.
Right.
So
how many domains in a given year do you think, or do you sell?
I sell probably 20 names in a year, but that includes, that includes names that I'm essentially dropping, right? Names that I've sold on NameLiquidator, for example.
Gotcha.
So I'm getting, between $9 and $100 or something. So if I look at my sales right now, so it's June 1st, I have sold 6 names closed And then I have a couple of payment plans, six-figure deals. They're payment plans, and then a deal in escrow right now that's mid to high five figures. And then I've got a handful of names that I got $15, $100 for. Last year, I sold a total of 22 names. 4 of those were wholesale. The others were retail. But a big portion of those were like, legal names that I sold for $1,500, $4,000, stuff like that. All in all, I sell upwards of $1 million a year in names. So last year was just over 800,000, and really a bulk of that came from 9 names, and then the rest of those were 4-figure sales or less.
Gotcha.
So there was like a $400,000 sale and a $150,000 sale, a $60,000, a $50,000, a $38,000, right? So it's that kind of thing.
And now, are most of those? I'm assuming most of those are inbound.
They're all inbound.
All inbound. So you do no outbound.
Right back to the selfish and lazy. No, yeah, I'm a lazy investor in that I don't do outbound, and I don't have brokers, with few exceptions. I just gave Epic a name to work on, thirsty.com. They're going to build a video, do outbound. PepsiCo just launched snacks.com, not my name. And I think with all the delivery, grocery delivery, the D2C that's happening right now, I can see thirsty.com as a good soda or alcohol delivery kind of service. So we're gonna do some outbound there. But that's pretty rare. Otherwise, I don't have brokers working on my names. Now, brokers certainly call me about names that I have, because most of the brokers have my list. They'll just say, "Hey, listen, I've got a fintech company with a budget up to $500,000. What do you have?" That's that sort of thing. I mean, that's happened. I think today, I got 2 inquiries like that. So that happens on a relatively regular basis. So I don't. So there's acquisitions, right? So the brokers have an acquisition request and they'll call me, but I don't do outbound to companies. And again, I'm not saying this is the right way. It's just what I'm doing, because you've got plenty of brokers out there making a good living outbounding and getting really good sales. And I reserve the right to change my mind at any time, but I haven't done it at this point, because I just feel like these names are appreciating. And if I wait a couple of years and wait for that inbound, maybe I'll sell it for much more money. But maybe not. Maybe I was better off selling it today. Here's an example. Years ago, the Reberry brothers reached out to me. They own huge domains and Dropcatch.
Right.
And so I own dropped.com, and they wanted that name. They offered me $35,000, and I said no, because I wanted 50. That was the number in my head. They ended up moving on, because that was what they wanted to spend, and they launched dropcatch.com instead of dropped.com. And this was years ago. And here I am, still sitting on drop.com. Now, maybe I should have, and it wasn't enough multiple, for me. It wasn't a home run.
Right.
It was a base hit, would have been. And so I passed. But I'm still sitting on that name.
And
right?
How many years has that been?
It's been, how long has Dropcatch been around? I mean, it's been years. And so, in retrospect, should I have taken that offer? And what could I have done with that $35,000? Right? I would have put it in other names. And I could give you, unfortunately, many, many examples like that of names that maybe I should have taken the offer. But by the same token, I've got a name in escrow right now. I remember I got an offer for twice what I paid right after the auction closed. Somebody missed it, and they emailed me the next day or a couple of days later, and they said, "Listen, I want this name. I know what you paid, so I'll double it." And I said, "No." Right? Mm-hmm. Now, maybe I should have doubled my money in a couple of days. And that was like a low 4-figure name. I don't remember exact number. And that's the name that's in escrow right now for mid to high 5 figures. Now, it's been years, but that was probably the right call. Sometimes it's the right call and sometimes it's not. And you just don't know, because I turn down offers all the time. But maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I should turn more. I don't know. I'm here to tell you I have no idea what I'm doing.
So then in terms of that, now you mentioned NameLiquidate. So how then do you determine out of your portfolio like what you're going to keep, what you're going to let go? And and for those not familiar with NameLiquidate, obviously it's a liquidation platform owned by Epic, and you basically can list your names there, and it's a what is it, like reverse Dutch auction, I believe.
The Dutch auction, exactly.
That starts at like $999 and works its way down to either a
$9
reserve price or $9 is the lowest.
Yeah, $9.97 I want to say is. I've actually bought names from NameLiquidate and DNWE. Those are the two kind of wholesale, like investor to investor platforms.
Right.
I mean, I can't see an end user ending up there. Certainly possible, right? But it's not really. It's an industry. Those are both industry platforms. DNWE is, we think this name is a good wholesale price at $399. It's curated. The Joshes, they assign a price and you accept or don't, and then they list it for whatever. And it could be anything. It could be $17,000. It could be, $59.
Right.
And so it's a wholesale price. And I bought names from there as well. NameLiquidate is, while you can do, it's not curated, but while you can set reserves, it's mostly kind of the lower tier stuff where, and this is how I use it. Anything I'm going to drop, I put it there at expiration, even beyond the expiration, because you still have that window. It's easier than a name jet, because you don't have to be 30 days out. You could be like, it's expired yesterday. I'm going to list it now, right? It's expiring next week. And so all my do not renews just end up on NameLiquidate. And look, $9 or $15 is better than $0.
That is true.
Right? So it's a way to make a little bit of money. And I have found that a fair percentage of the names I'm dropping end up selling there. Because the names I'm dropping are not terrible names. It's just I'm going in a little bit different direction with my portfolio. So I'm cleaning house, and it's a name that I've had for 8 years, and I still haven't sold it, and I'm done with it. I'll just dump it and move on to the next thing. And so I'll take the $9 because it's better than nothing. So that's, I think they're a little bit different position, those two platforms.
Then how do you determine how long you're willing to invest?
Depends on the name. So if I've got a name like carpool.com, I own Carpool. I've had hundreds of inquiries. I'm never going to give up on that, right? I've turned down $250,000 because it's a seven-figure name. It's a name that will, in time, become more valuable as we get into robotaxis, right? Autonomous vehicles. Individual car ownership is going to be going down because you can summon a car for $2 and take a ride. Like, why are you going to?
Yeah.
Right. And
you
I
don't have to concern yourself with parking either if you live in a downtown or urban area.
Parking, ownership, insurance, maintaining it. I mean, you name it. There's a million reasons why people aren't going to be owning cars anymore. Everything is going to be transitioning to this kind of robo-taxi carpooling model. And look, Google owns Waze, and Waze has a carpool feature, waze.com/carpool. Look, carpool.com, Mike Zeiger and I joke about, he owned a Carpool with a K.
Right.
And sold it for $5,000. Right? So carpool in any form is going to be a good name, and I've got the actual premium Carpool spelled correctly. And it's a seven-figure name, and I'm going to just wait for it. So I turn down these offers and wait. Now, those names, I'm never going to give up on them. Will I sell a name that, I don't know, I want $600,000 and there's a $400,000 cash offer? I don't know. Depends on the situation. Maybe there's something else I want to buy. maybe there's, maybe I need the cash. Maybe I've sat on it long. Who knows?
Right.
I have a portfolio of 3letter.coms, and during the boom times, there was one, it was kqt.com, and I got inquiries every single day for kqt.com. I don't know why. I don't know why the Chinese like that name, but they're all Chinese inquiries, and I was getting multiple inquiries a day, and I had a price point on it, and I remember it was 40 grand, which, I mean, they continue to even be worth more than that. I sold it years ago, and I was just done. I'm like, fine, let me just sell this thing, even though I might be leaving some money on the table. I'm tired of all the inquiries. Somebody hit me at the right time. So look, how long will I wait? It depends. There's, my premium oneword.coms, some I've had for years, and I will have them for many more years. I kind of see myself, at some point selling off my other companies, and I'll just sell domain names because they keep turning money. I mean, I get inquiries and the names sell, and they're not making more, right? They're not making more premium.coms.
That's true.
One of the names I've talked to a couple of people about the last few days is True. I bought True.net, and I paid over $8,000 for it, and I'm fine with it. And the reason is, what is True.com worth? It's a solid 7-figure name. Now, it just right. So happens that TrueCar, they own it, and they got it in a fire sale for $350,000.
Wow.
But I mean, it was like 2014. Even in 2014, that was still a good price. But they bought it from TrueBeginnings.com, who was filing for bankruptcy, and literally it was like 2 weeks. It had 2 weeks to raise $350,000, and Nagar at Cito made the deal happen. But now, first of all, True.com is now totally unavailable. It's owned by a giant company, and right. No one is ever going to extract it. Even if that company went under and there was a bankruptcy sale, there's all the links and all the other IP that goes with it. And so the domain's just not going to be extracted, right? So it's just never really going to be available. And if it was, that is a $2-3 million name. Easy. So what's a good alternative for that? If you want to name your company True, which doesn't everybody want to name their company like True is such a great word, right? 4-letter, single syllable, such a great positive meaning. If you don't have a $3 million budget, right, you could get that at a fraction, right? The .net at a fraction of the .co.
Right.
Fraction of the .com value. I just sold Gravity.net for $38,000. Gravity.com, again, 7-figure name. They couldn't get it. I don't know who owns it. I don't know the backstory, but they couldn't get it. And but for $38,000, they'll take Gravity.net.
Especially, and I guess in that though, Braden, you mentioned something, because it's one thing for the matching.com to be unavailable, but it's a whole different thing when for instance, I had another interview with this young lady named Kristen Anderson of catch.co, and they tried to get catch.com, but it was owned by Apple. And I was like, well, Kristen, why did you move forward with catch.co? And she was like, well, Apple's likely never going to develop catch.com. She's like, so why not? There's not going to be any brand illusion, with going with the .co versus that .com, just because it's like Apple's not ever going to get into our line of business. Now, knock on wood, you better hope that's the case. But in most cases, I just kind of find that that's the reality of just going, well, you know what? I'm not going to spend millions for a .com when I could probably do an alternative and still build a rather profitable company.
I would add to that. I always say that domains are budget driven. Apple will sell that name, but what's the price tag on it, mm-hmm. right? And that price tag, Kristen can't afford. No offense to Kristen, right?
Right.
Like none of us can, because like $10 million is not going to move the needle for Apple. Right. But somebody, if you get a hold of the right person, somebody at Apple might say, "Oh, look, $10 million, fine, we'll sell it. We're not even using it. Let's take it." FB.com is worth, it's a two-letter, good letters. It's probably $1 million, $1.2 million, $1.4 million, right? It cost $8.5 million for Facebook to buy it from the Farm Bureau. That was their brand. That's what they were using. That's what they had been using. Like, they had to change all their email addresses, all their branding, everything. But Facebook got to a number that motivated Farm Bureau to rebrand. And they picked up, I think, FBA.org instead. They took some of their proceeds from the 8.5 and but so the thing is, it's like everybody has their price. There's businesses out there that have been acquired by big companies just for the domain name.
Right.
I have tried to do that. Small businesses that have these, that are 20 years old, that have these fantastic names. It's like, okay, well, how much is your company? Because I'm trying to buy this name and you won't sell it to me for, whatever. How much is your company? I'll buy the company. I'll get the domain with it. I'll sell off your company without the domain, right?
Right.
So, that happens. Or you just offer them enough money and they,
and they're like, yeah, let's make it happen.
Right. They do it. And there's plenty of companies that, and I've sold names to companies that were working with using the .net or some other name, and this is an upgrade, right? Gravity.net was an upgrade from whatever they were using. Packet.com, I sold to Packet.net, who had raised $56 million, and then they can afford it. And for $350,000, they took the .com. Made more sense for them. Then they sold out the whole company for 300 and something million. So, look, you get the best name that you can afford. If you're talking about a big company, then you just go get the .com, right? If you have the budget for it, you start with the .com.
Right.
And if you can't get that one word .com, then you pick a different one word .com, right? And so that's why I've kind of gone to this higher end. I'm going to get the premium .coms and wait. And I'll just wait for the big company. And sometimes it's a startup, and sometimes they're willing to put out enough money to make it happen. Now, to your next question about payment plans, I'm happy to do a payment plan. If depending on how long the terms are. So the deal I have in escrow right now is, well, I won't say the name, but I'll tell you the pricing just because it's not done yet. But but it will be public because I don't do NDAs. It's a $65,000 sale. It's $45,000 down and $20,000 over 6 months.
Gotcha.
And so he said we'd take. Well, he wanted to pay me. I think he came up to 55 after some discussion. He started at 30. I said 65. He came up to 55. And I said, all right, I'll take your 55, and you just pay the rest over like whatever is fair for both of us. You tell me. And he's like, well, what do you need? And I said, look, I'm easy to work with. You tell me what's gonna work for you. Like If you say 2 years, no. If is it 2 years or we're talking 3 months, right? So I don't want to wait a long time.
Right.
And he said, so I said, you tell me. He said, all right, how about $45,000 down and give me 6 months to pay the rest? I said, okay. I didn't negotiate with him because, there's not a lot of, let's just close the deal.
Right.
We're close enough. And since I have zero risk, right? Zero. He's going to give me $45,000 down. You think he's going to walk away? Like,
hope not.
Right? I mean, the worst case scenario is he doesn't make another payment, right? And I've got his $45,000. Of course, he's going to continue making payments. So worst thing is he makes some payments and then he has to default, and then what? Right? That I still own the domain name.
Right.
So it's pointed to his website. So he's got some emails. Like, I'm in the driver's seat, right? Now, I have foreclosed, but if someone runs out of money or they lose their investors, whatever, I'll work with them to the best of my ability. I don't want to. I've got a couple of names that one guy I'm trying to bring him back, and he's already paid me like $75,000 out of a $250,000 purchase. It's been months. I'm talking to him. I'm trying to get him to find another investor and keep going. I don't want to foreclose on him. I want to see him.
Right. You want to see him be successful.
Yeah. I've got another guy who defaulted twice. And I said, and I was trying to bring him back to the table. And I said, look, just give me something, if you can't make your pay, give me $5,000. Just give me something just so we can continue. And then, we'll push it and you make a payment next quarter.
Right.
And I'll keep it live. So what am I giving up? Right. And here's a guy that's paid me like $40,000, $45,000, something like that on a $400,000 sale. Look, I understand his position. I don't really want to take his down payment and take the domain back. I'd rather see him, finish. But where's my risk?
Right.
Now, even if I take equity, and there's startups that are like, look, we don't have the money. Can you contribute the domain name? If I like the startup, if I think they have a good business plan, if I like what they're doing, and I look at it with an investor's eye, then maybe I will donate the name or take some payment and some equity. However, I always add a clawback clause in that the domain stays in my name, and they oftentimes will book it as debt, right? That converts.
Right.
So sometimes the other investors don't like it because they're like, look, we don't want a $500,000 debt on here. The price might get ramped up. So there's a deal that I'm in discussions with somebody. I have a name listed at $250,000. He wants me to take all equity, no cash. And I said, well, I'm not going to do it at $250,000. That's the cash price. He said, no, right. $500,000 in equity. He says, I think that's fair if we double it. I'm like, okay. If I like the company enough, I'll take $500,000 in equity. If the company goes insolvent at any point, the name comes back to me. No one's ever pushed back on this clause. And because why would they, right? And that, because the thing is that you don't want to name, the domain will stay in my control until I get my equity or until the payment, whatever the plan is. But should the company go insolvent, the name reverts back to me, because why should I lose it? If I've lost my investment, I should get my collateral back. And and what happens is, instead of the company going insolvent and then in bankruptcy, they kind of figure out what the assets are and sell them off. And no, let's make this clear. This piece goes back to me, right? I put it in the contract, easy peasy. So now I have much less risk, right? The risk is only in the company really doing well.
Right.
But if it fails, I get my domain back.
Now, what happens if they burn that domain? Email marketing, SEO?
What's the likelihood that a company that is legitimately marketing themselves is going to burn that domain? What's the likelihood it's going to get de-indexed? Which we can fix, by the way. That's fixable.
Correct.
But we're talking about someone buying a name and then using it to spam and to do something less than legitimate, and like that doesn't happen on premium names. Like, can it happen? Sure, but the likelihood.
Right. Now, do you write it into the contract?
Yeah, it's standard in the contract.
Okay.
Yeah, it's already in there. I'm just not concerned about it. And a lot of times, honestly, I don't even have contracts. When it's a big sale, if it's like $500,000 or more, my lawyer works with their lawyer and we paper it up. But if it's a name that's like 5 figures or, low 6 figures, $150,000, we don't even paper it. We just put it in escrow, and there's escrow instructions, and that's it. I mean, I've this name right now that's in escrow, $65,000. It's not papered. Just these are extra escrow instructions, and they make their payments, and that's it. Because they trust the escrow. I use Epic for escrow, and it's at the registrar. They get immediate use of the name, not control, but they can build a website. They can point the DNS. They can get email addresses. They just can't move it to another registrar, and they're fine with that, and they kind of trust the system. And so it's oftentimes not papered. I do 1 or 2 contracts a year.
So then in terms of the domain industry and its future, like what do you make of or what do you see in terms of equity payments being on the rise?
Um,
Think more people will consider them more or less?
Will investors consider? They certainly should if they can afford it.
Hmm.
I like cash flow, right? I like the fact that, look, I certainly rather have like all the money up front, but I don't mind payments like that. I've got a bunch of names that are out. I've got leased names. They're just leases, and so money comes in every month. It's not huge money, but money comes in every month, and I
So
still own
lease,
the
wait,
name.
wait. Leases. So lease meaning, hey, I'll let you use this domain, but it comes back to me at some set period in time.
Crazy, right? I I yeah, so I've got a lease right now that's $325 a month. And it was this at the time it was the smallest deal I had ever done. And I didn't want to do it. And I look back at my purchase price. My purchase price was $1,600. I thought, you know what? And this has now been on lease for a year and a half. And it's set up at Epic, and Epic bangs his credit card every month on the same day for $325. And it's like free money at this point. And this guy has built his website and built his company on this name. He does not own it. He does not have a buyout clause at all. And either he's going to continue giving me $325 a month forever, right? Or he's going to realize that he should buy it from me. But now at that point, it's going to be worth more. So he's going to have to buy it from me for fair market value.
Oh man. So I mean it kind of puts I guess it kind of makes me think about physical real estate of going, hey, I don't necessarily own the building, but I'll go lease the building, 5-year period, blah blah blah. Now obviously I guess he could move to a different domain, but then he's already built the brand. There would be a lot of hoops that he's gonna have to jump through to go and change his brand. Could happen, who knows? But that I mean from a domain investor side, I go, congratulations. But from an end user, I'm going, that doesn't even make sense.
All right, I'll give you another example of a lease I did. It was DUIattorneys.com, and I wanted this is years ago. I wanted 200 grand, and we're going back, I don't know, 6 or 7 years. So 200 grand, and the guy said, I don't have the money. I want to lease it. I said, well, okay, but you're going to build this business, and you're going to have. And he was building a directory, and there's going to be subscribers, and I said, but if you just buy it, then you own it. I mean, if you just lease it, then like forever, you're going to be paying money. If you want to buy it out, then it's going to cost you even more. He said, look, first of all, I don't have the 200 grand. And he says, the money I do have, I need to put into marketing. So I'd rather do that. And he says, and this was his whole model because he had a bunch of premium legal names, and he had this subscription plan, and he leased them all. He did a rev share. So I said, okay. And I had a minimum of like $5,000 a month, and plus, if he had met certain tiers, go up based on his revenue. And he paid that for about 5 years. So he paid me more than $200,000. And then his business took a turn, and he started missing payments and short paying. And I worked with him for a long time, like, pay me what you can. And,
right.
and then he stopped paying, and then, and then it went months, no payments. And I was like, look, I'm going to have to foreclose because you haven't paid me in months. And he's like, wow. I know, I understand. I'm sorry, but it's business has dropped off and I just can't afford it anymore. So, all right. I said, but you also owe me a bunch of money. And he's like, I know, but I don't have it. I'm going to have to file BK or something. I don't know. So I said, look, I'll tell you what, I'm going to, obviously I'm foreclosing because you don't pay me anymore.
Right.
He still had subscribers. So I said, I'm going to take this name back. And I'm going to forgive all the money you owe me and interest and everything. You owe me nothing, but you're going to give me a copy of your website and your client files. And I'm going to continue the business and then forgive everything you owe me. And he's like, why would I give you my business? I'm like, because I'm taking the domain away and then you're going to have nothing. So might as well. And then you're going to owe me a bunch of money.
Right.
And he's like, I need to think about it. I'm like, look, I'm not trying to squeeze you. And like, I'm trying to come up, I recognize that you don't have money. Like you told me, like if you had money, you'd be making a payment. Obviously you don't want this business to come to an end, but I have to take the domain away. You told me I should take the domain away. So I'm trying to come up with a scenario in which you don't owe me money and I get something for it. And he's like, let me think about it. Calls me the next day. And he says, and I was like, look, I'm trying to be cool with you here. I'm not trying to like squeeze you.
Right.
He calls me the next day and he's like, you were right. I get it now. This is cool with you. Like if I can now walk away with not owing you anything, then I'm going to do that. And he says, and I'm going to pay my programmer to work with your programmer to get everything like transitioned over smoothly. I'll pay for hosting the next couple of months. And, you know, I really appreciate this. And so we took it over and we're still earning about $2,500 a month from that website.
Amazing.
And I didn't do any of that work, right? He did all that work, but there's
Right.
still subscribers. And so I don't know what the math is. I could figure it out, but you know, $5,000 a month for 5 years roughly, and then $2,500 a month for another, whatever, year and a half or something. That was the right call. Like that's better than taking the $200,000 probably
Totally.
in cash up front, right? Because it just kept on coming in.
Right. Now, have you added subscribers to it? I'm assuming you have.
Yeah, so actually, it was a project we hadn't gotten to. I coincidentally just had a conversation with the woman that runs that company, and they're just now starting a campaign to add subscribers to it because we do have the client base.
Wow.
So we are working on it. Newsletter went out this morning. Actually, that includes that property. I did on the DN Academy social that we do every Friday.
Yeah.
I had posed this question. I had an inquiry from a guy in India. I own plasmatv.com, which admittedly is past its prime.
Just a little bit.
just a smidge. I paid $5,000 for it many years ago. And then that's the problem with buying kind of technology names if the technology is going out, because I don't do outbound, and so it just sat forever and decreased in value, right? That was not an appreciating asset. And so I think I had it listed for like $3,500. Right? Just like, let me get something out of it.
Right.
So I get this inquiry from a guy who wants to lease it. Guy in India, $10 a month. And so I brought it up to social, and I said, whatever you guys think I should do, that's what I'm going to do. Because at this point, like, I kind of want to help the guy in India, and let's just make this fun. And it, you know, what the number is not going to really move the needle that much, but let's talk about it. I'm based on traffic. I'm making 4 cents a month. So anything is going to be more than 4 cents.
Right.
And I'm sitting on it. I've been sitting on it for years, and something's better than nothing. So, you know, everybody said, don't do $10 but you should do something. So I ended up settling up with the guy. We settled on $35 a month. And it's all set up at escrow, at Epic Escrow, and it's automated, right? So they just ding his credit card, I guess, for the $35 a month. So I went from making 4 cents a month to $35 a month minus credit card fees. And I do nothing, right?
Wow.
So look, I'm not
Wait. And you said that's a lease. That isn't outright ownership. That's
it is a lease. This is the only name that I have where he does have a buyout option at $3,500. And I don't know if he's going to be trying to sell it maybe, and then I don't know what his plan is.
Right.
But I'm getting $35 a month. Went out for many years. I got $0 a month. So it's better than nothing. Now, there's certainly, you can make the argument that there's an opportunity cost, right? Because now I can't sell it to somebody else.
Right.
But, you know, it's been all these years, and the likelihood of selling at this point is pretty slim. And if somebody reached out to me and like made me an offer, then I would reach out to him and we, you know, put something together.
Figure it
I
out.
don't expect that to happen. I also own plasmatelevision.com.
For anybody out there.
for somebody else. So the thing is that I certainly would not take a $35 a month deal if I had to do anything, right? Because then it wouldn't pencil out if there's time involved. But I sent one email to Epic, and then that was it. I washed my hands of it. So now every month it'll be $35. But it's better than a sharp stick in the eye. But you have enough of those, $35, $325, $5,000, right? And now there's cash flow, and then you add in the payment plans,
right?
Which are much more significant, right? Because those are typically bigger names. Although I've had $1,500 names where they want to give me $150 a month, and I've done those because why not? I also kind of want them. I want to see someone take a name and utilize it. This is the name they want. Build your business, go do your thing. I'm not going to skip any meals if I don't get all the money up front.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? That's fine. And then you have enough of these deals, enough cash flow, and it works. It goes right into my Epic account and pays for my renewals, and great.
And that's it.
Right. That's it. It's easy peasy.
Well, Braden, one last question here, or rather topic that I think is probably timely and a lot of people are going to want to know. Obviously, you've had your hands in conferences in some fashion, whether it's attendee, whether it's moderating. And so a bit of insight. I mean, where does the domain industry go with COVID now? Well, our industry will continue, and it will survive. Not only survive, but it will thrive. You've got the world now realizes you can't be offline. You just can't. And if you look at companies that have been kind of digital first, right? Mm-hmm. There are brick and mortar stores that have really been focused on their online sales, and so what's happened is they've had a dip of 15%. Because everybody just went online and bought everything. Right? Good on them. And then you've got, all the delivery, you've got everything else that just proved to the world, look, the internet is here to stay. The internet is virus proof. Your computer's not virus proof, but people can always shop online. And so these companies are now kind of refocusing on their digital presence. And so you've got existing companies that are launching new brands, like the example I gave earlier with PepsiCo launching snacks.com for all their free-to-play stuff, right? This is great. I mean, if they just launched Pepsi.com/snacks, that's not nearly as good, right? Snacks.com, how are you going to forget that? I heard that once and I held on to it. You're not going to forget that, right? It's great. And then you've got all the new companies. I got an inquiry yesterday through a broker. He's doing an acquisition for a travel company. Obviously, travel companies have gotten crushed. They'll come back. But this travel company was kind of an offline travel company. Yikes. And so, and they have a big budget. It's a big company. And they've got a 7-figure budget for a name. They spend 7 figures a year in advertising. And so now they're like, we need a good, solid brand. So they can really be digital first. And there's a lot of companies that are doing that. They're really focused on kind of this pivot. And I'm seeing that with my investments. Morgan Linton has got Bold Metrics, and I'm an investor and on the board. And talk about timely. Yeah, right. So this is kind of he's a contactless fit, right? So not only can you order, Bold Metrics is all about ordering clothes. It's all about ordering clothes online, right? And it's an algorithm that determines your sizing very, very accurately, more accurately than if you were hand measured. Wow. And now, if people are going in a store, they don't want to get hand measured, right? So now that's why he's using this term contactless fit, because now, even though you might have somebody going to a store, we want to use the algorithm to determine your size.
because now there's problems with even the pen measuring. So his company, like they're gangbusters now because all clothing companies are reaching out to them saying, you need to help us with our online solution because we have this problem with fit and people are ordering 2 sizes and sending one back because they don't know. Like we need to figure this out. Wow. And they have this great solution. And I'm seeing that all over the place, right? All over the place. I have an investment in an AI company that determines palate, and it's an algorithm, and so they focus primarily on wine, but they do fragrance and other stuff. But all these wineries are contacting them saying, "Okay, we now need help. We need to help people order wine. So since they can't really come into the store so much, and we don't have all the wine tastings like we used to have. We need a better online solution to sell wine online, right?" And so this company, it's called Tastery, and they help these companies sell wine, right, by determining what people like.
Wow.
And so you've got all of these solutions that are helping companies online, and all that requires, domain names.
Right.
Somebody's launching, whether it's an existing company or not, they need domain names. And so domain names are just going up in value because there's now this like stampede to get online, right? Either companies that were online before and really need to like gin up what they're doing, or new companies that are going to be digital first. I mean, there's so many reasons, but our industry is really, really benefiting. We're still selling names. I'm still getting offers. A lot of brokers had, like the first week of May, they had fantastic Drew Rosner sales, like the best he's ever had in his career. And a lot of brokers closing deals. I mean, I haven't sold anything significant in the last couple of months. I mean, closed and done and paid, but I've got offers. And I got one in escrow, and it's not yet closed, so I'm not counting my chickens because shit happens. Yeah. And then I've got some solid negotiations and discussions happening right now. Our industry marches on, man.
Totally.
even better.
Totally. Well, Braden, man, it's been good to have you here on the show. How can people keep up with you? I mean, is it going to Legal Brand Marketing, Twitter, what?
I mean, I tweet a little bit. I'm probably more active on Facebook because, again, I'm going to be 50 next year. You won't find me on Snapchat because,
Instagram.
Yeah, so I'm actually, I don't post anything on Instagram because I just decided, I'll just post on Facebook and not. I do stalk on Instagram though, so if you post something, I will see it.
Yeah,
because I'm more of an Insta stalker than a poster.
That's 2 of us then, because I don't post on Instagram. I have an account, but it's just I'm like, all right, whatever.
See, you're old too.
Yeah,
that's
getting there, man. Getting there.
Yeah, but you can connect with me on Twitter at Braden Pollock or Facebook, same.
Well, there you have it, man. I definitely appreciate it.
My pleasure, anytime.
And thank you, listeners, for tuning in to Kickstart Commerce, where we share search marketing and domain name strategies to help grow your business. Please subscribe to this podcast via iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, or Podbean. Last but not least, please visit kickstartcommerce.com to subscribe to the newsletter sharing tips and tricks about the disciplines of digital strategy. Thanks, and that's all for now.